Meanwhile, the U.S. blacklisting 50 Chinese companies from receiving American chips and saying they'll crack down on smuggling, or chips sent to other countries that are making their way into China. Let's bring in Dewardric McNeal. He's managing director and senior policy analyst at Longview Global and a CNBC contributor. Dewardric, investors are naturally jittery because this is a huge market for NVIDIA chips, both in terms of what we actually know and how they might be getting there. So how big a deal is today's news, do you think?
Well, I think it's certainly something that investors should keep an eye on. What it says, Kelly, all of these actions, the Chinese actions as well as the ones announced earlier this week by the U.S., what it says is that the chip war, Kelly, is still on, and that the Trump administration still sees a need to continue with what I'm calling some policy continuity with the Biden administration to try and prevent China's chip industry from developing, the maturation, and to try and keep a performance delta between what the U.S. is doing and China is doing. But China is fighting back aggressively, as we've seen with the DeepSeek story here over the last several weeks, Kelly.
So is this all kind of posturing and the demand will ultimately be there and NVIDIA will have a lot of opportunities there in the long run? Or do investors need to rethink just how big their market will be?
Yeah, look, I think this is about a $17 or so billion market as it currently stands for NVIDIA. But I would not expect for that type of market dominance to remain over time. The Chinese don't want it. The Chinese may not need it. They have certainly figured out a way, we think, to do some of this as just good enough. So less energy, less compute power, but still pretty efficient for its AI needs, Kelly. So I think the future here is not that long. And so I do think investors should start to think about that.
Do you think, Dewardric, that DeepSeek is entirely it's not real, but as they say it is? Or do you think there might be a little, fibbing going on here about the cost and capabilities?
Well, I think that's certainly a question, Brian. I'll tell you something else that's being discussed. Now, this could just be wounded egos, but if you talk to a lot of people here in Washington, the view is that there was some technology diffusion that went into what we see here. So taking some of the U.S. advanced chips that have been moved through these third-party loopholes in place to get to some of those achievements. And this latest action by the U.S. is intended to shut down that back door. So I think the debate is still out, but certainly I think we are at a place where DeepSeek is real, regardless of how they got there. And I think it's going to challenge the West for sure.
Dewardric, what other risks do you see more broadly for U.S. firms in China, if any? I mean, look at the summit that was just held to kind of court global leaders, and Tim Cook was there.
Yeah, look, I think there are a lot of risks still on the security side. Again, I come back to this announcement this week. The policy continuity here, I think, may shock a lot of people. But there are a lot of people in the Trump administration who still believes that the technology war, the chip war, which was started by Biden, could be ramped up with Trump because they still want to prevent this technology from being used on the battlefield, Kelly, where a few nanometers can make all the difference for targeting, communication, and autonomous decision-making in the battle space. So I think this space is going to remain a hot and contested space for a very long time, and investors need to be aware of that.
All right, Dewardric, thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Kelly.
Dewardric McNeal.